Okay.
Are we all good in shot?
Yep, and we're live. Let's wait a couple minutes for some people to wrap up.
Welcome everyone to another 12 o'clock show with Mayor Joe. Joining me today is State Representative Erica Crawley. Thank you for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's a beautiful day here in Reynoldsburg. Normally we start off talking a little bit about code enforcement, but I don't have any really good pictures for you today. Just a couple of common things you might see in the not too distant future. Basically, we're still going around to the commercial properties as well as residential, but primarily a lot of our focus has been commercial properties as well. Sometimes it's as simple as power washing your building, sometimes it's a little landscape, things like that. And I hate to say it, we did get cited this week as a city. Our street department building was cited, and I've got a very large folder of things that we have to go through, so we are holding ourselves to the same standard as everyone else. Those pictures we're going to hold off on, though, just for a little while. I do have a couple of big announcements coming up as far as events this week. The first one is going to be our Chamber of Commerce lunch is actually going to be tomorrow at the Reynoldsburg United Methodist Church. And it's going to be, I believe, at 11:30. You can pre-register. There should be some information up on the Facebook page about that. We're going to be talking about a couple of things, but most especially the big thing is going to be our Small Business Saturday. We're going to try and promote our small businesses here in Reynoldsburg on August 22nd. Try and get people to come out and help our local economy grow a little bit. So we're working with a number of those members, and we should have a, I guess it's called the Passport to Reynoldsburg. So you'll actually have some coupons and some different specials that'll come up from local businesses in August and beyond. So we've got that coming up tomorrow. We also have our school supply drive started by the Lions Club. Again, whether school's online or in person or however it works out, school supplies are going to be needed. So you're more than welcome to drop off school supplies here at City Hall on the 15th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Again, the Lions Club will be there. I'll be there. I know we'll have some other representatives from different organizations and community members helping bring all those things in because school's starting, and that's a good thing because this weekend is the tax-free holiday, so you can start getting some of those school shopping supplies taken care of. I will say it was odd walking through school supplies. This is the first time in quite some time where I haven't had to stock up on a lot of things, but I did get a new lunchbox, and really that's the most important thing. So, we also have another item that you can do if you want to donate your used cell phone. We are actually collecting some used cell phones that will be donated to local organizations for victims of domestic violence, so that way they have an opportunity to have a safe phone to get out of the area for the safety and anonymity of all of those involved. So we're accepting those here at City Hall. It was started a program by Reynoldsburg Police Department, and so we kind of grew with it from that. So if you have cell phones sitting around or you're looking to get a new one and you want to get rid of an old one, this would be a great opportunity. So again, kind of check out the website on that one. So those are our big things for what's coming up over the next week or two. Reminder, there is no farmers market tomorrow because we were hoping we would have the Tomato Festival. But we're not having the Tomato Festival, but we are having the Unfest this year. So there'll be some carnival food at the Civic Park this weekend from it's 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Mm-hmm. We also have a car show that will be here at JFK that you can take a look at with a couple of food trucks. The carnival food is drive-through only, and it does take cash, but if you want to get your fill of your elephant ears and candy apples and corn dogs and whatnot, this is your opportunity to do it, just kind of doing a drive-through all the way across. That being said, now again, we're going to go ahead and turn our attention over to State Representative Crawley. I'm so appreciative that you were able to join us today. I know that it is a busy time all the way across, but I guess we'll kind of start off just talking about with COVID. How's your family dealing with it? What are things like? What's different now?
Well, first, just thank you, Mayor, for inviting me to your weekly talk. It is a pleasure to be here. I know we were trying to get this scheduled ahead of time a few weeks ago, but happy to be here. As far as COVID-19 and how my family is dealing with it, I always say I am my neighbors are me. And so the same thing that my neighbors are dealing with in the district, I'm dealing with too. I have twin girls who are going into the 11th grade, and just like every other parent, nervous and have anxiety about school opening up. I do have one daughter that's in Reynoldsburg and one that is going to another school this year, and the one that goes to Reynoldsburg will be going online, but probably will at some point in time, if when the schedule changes, has to go back in. And I don't know what COVID-19 will look like at that point in time. The other child, they are preparing for, go back to school. Everybody's coming back. And I don't know how social distancing will work and masks being required. And so the inquiries that I get in my rep box about, teachers being nervous, parents being nervous, I share those same concerns. And when I even look at leadership, whether it's on the national level or even on the state level, I am a little disappointed too, because there isn't a lot of guidance. Everything has been thrown to the school districts, and we're all just trying to figure it out. So I'm in the same boat as everyone else.
There's just so much uncertainty, and I agree. I think that there's just a lack of guidance, and I mean we're just a few weeks away from a lot of school districts starting, and teachers that their districts might not have said what's going to happen yet. They're still kind of waiting. I know my wife teaches in Canal Winchester. They're hoping to find out tonight what the deal is, so they don't know. And for those of you that are out there that aren't as familiar, there's a big difference between prepping for school on an online capacity versus prepping for school when it's in person. And then it's something completely different when you're trying to do both at the same time. So there's so many uncertainties with it. And then you look at what parents are going through, childcare. We all understand the impact of where kids are, and then how does childcare work if your school's going all online? Are you working at remote, or if not, are your children old enough to be able to handle staying at them, by themselves? And even if they are old enough, are they responsible enough to be staying at home? And that's where I think that when you look at some of the board meetings that have gone around in the last couple of weeks, and parents that are concerned on both sides, that want everybody there all 5 days or all online, or there's so much uncertainty and there's so much out there that school districts are just they're going as best as they can, and the information changes so fast. I know that our superintendent of Reynoldsburg, Melvin Brown, will be joining us long after everything is done. I didn't want to subject him to this until after that. But yeah, it's very hard, and I hope that all the parents out there and teachers, we're patient, and we're trying to figure out what we can do all the way.
I was on a Zoom meeting last night with some people who are running for office, and then just people who wanted to participate in a conversation, and we talked a lot about education and parents going back to work, and I mentioned last night, and I'll say again, I'm a single mom, and so luckily for my child who is going to be going to school online, when I go back into session and have committee, I can take her with me. So she and they have gone to the State House with me because I don't have childcare. So they've sat in committee, they've been in chambers, and they sit in my office, and I have that flexibility, and I'm blessed. But that is not everyone. And there was a time when, if I wasn't at the State House and had a flexible schedule where I could take my child, I would be in the same boat, having concerns about people who have to go to work. They have to go into a building, and it's not necessarily feasible to take their children with them, or they have a first grader, and they need to have someone come in and help, if they're going to school online and need to engage in with a teacher online. That's a question that people are asking, like, what are we going to do? I need some assistance when I can't afford it, and I don't even know where to turn. And it's hard not having the answers, and it's hard kind of being in the same position too.
Well, we're looking just even at City Hall and the city of Reynoldsburg. I mean, a lot of our employees live in Reynoldsburg, but a number of them don't, and so different school districts are doing different things. And we're talking about the same thing. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're accommodating to our employees, and I think we're going to be. Not every business has that flexibility, and certain parts of what we do here, you don't want a first grader going out and working the streets, working in the street department or something. It just doesn't work out that way. But again, we're going to try and be flexible, and I just hope that employers are also doing that, because it's very frustrating for everybody.
Absolutely.
So when we move on to other things, I know, because you're not in session right now, correct?
Correct.
All right, so where do you see, I know it's an election year, so all the rules are off and everything else. Do you see what kind of legislative issues might be coming up in the fall once everything's back?
That's a great question. So I think we still have the same legislative issues that we had prior to COVID-19 and even in the beginning, making sure that families come first and that they can keep a roof over their head, the water running, and the lights on. We have offered, some of my colleagues have offered legislation around moratoriums with evictions, and because we know that the moratorium has been lifted and we are anticipating a slew of evictions coming through, and people are scared. Also, we have been working with ODJFS on unemployment claims and PUA, and my office and some of my other colleagues' offices are flooded every day. On Monday, when I talked to my legislative aide, we had like 46 inquiries just over Saturday and Sunday for PUA. And so there's people out there who still have not received one check from unemployment. And so what does that look like? How do we make sure that people can keep their utilities on, water running, obviously for COVID-19, and having to wash our hands multiple times and just be hygienic and have clean water? How do we take care of those things? And then also when it comes back to education, there are schools who are going to be, kids have to come every day, and at some point in time we'll have everybody back in school. So schools still need resources, whether it's funding for transportation or for sanitation, and we need to be able to take care of those things.
So I know that the budget is going to be a big issue,
right?
And I know that education took the brunt of it, not just at the K-12 but also at higher education. Is there any potential? When does that process look? Because I know you're on the education committee,
right?
So what are you hearing? Is there anything that you'll be looking as far as, are they going to be using any of the rainy day fund to help compensate things? I know, because I know the answer, but I'm hopeful.
Well, we would like the rainy day funds to be used, especially since there is a massive budget cut across state agencies. And when we look at what was initially cut, education obviously was one of them. And we still have CARES Act funding coming down from the federal government to the state. The controlling board a few weeks ago just released another $100,000 for K through 12, and then $100 million for K through 12, and then another $200 million for higher ed. There is also a grant from ODE that is reimbursable for expenses for school districts going all the way back to March, and so that's available. And then there is still more CARES Act funding that's eligible for school districts when it comes to technology, purchasing laptops, expanding broadband and Wi-Fi and hotspots and sanitation. So we do have that. It's not enough, and we know that. And the governor has funds outside of the rainy day fund. There was CARES Act money that came for the governor, and I've reached out to see how the governor plans on spending those resources. And so, I think we're just in an unfortunate situation. I know the governor is holding on to that rainy day funds. I think it's like $2.8 billion that's sitting there somewhere around there, almost $3 billion. And my neighbors are like, we're in a storm. Yeah. It's beyond raining. It is storming, and it's unfortunate. But I would hope that the governor will start looking at using some of the rainy day funds, since revenue isn't looking like it was projected, because local governments and school districts need the assistance.
Yeah, one big thing that I would always suggest, and if you are a watcher of this show, I'm always a big fan of everybody not only writing but also calling state representatives, calling the office of the governor, just because I think sometimes it's when you actually have a conversation. I know I'm doing the same thing for the federal level. That you need to ask and let them know what the real life story is. So most of you are aware in Reynoldsburg that the L Brands has laid off a number of employees, and Reynoldsburg was hit with over 150 job losses in the middle of all of this. So we're still waiting on what the financial impact is going to be, but obviously when revenues are down anyway because of COVID, then you have this hit on top of it. It becomes very concerning for me in this office because of what that impact has on the city, whether it's our, city services that are there, and most especially our police forces.
Right.
The safety of the city comes first, but again, when the revenue starting getting to a point where we're not sure what's going to happen, and we're restricted with CARES funding right now about what we can use with it, that's just, it's an issue that's out there. And I know that the governor has talked about it in the past. I know the federal government is working on it, and we're hoping to hear something back in the next couple of weeks. Maybe, we'll see.
Right. I know that we are looking for the federal government to, pass legislation that will have some funding for local governments and municipalities. We do have House Bill 481 that passed in late June that provides funding and grant opportunities for local governments to go ahead and apply for assistance. There is restrictions around that funding, but that money is available. And I hope that as we look to the House of Representatives, we look to go back into session at the end of September, beginning of October, that we will be looking at, if the governor's not willing to use rainy day funds, what can we do legislatively? And I know earlier in the spring, my colleagues across the aisle had, brought up the conversation around legislation, to get some rainy day funds. But I hope that the federal government passes legislation that will continue to have the extending unemployment benefits for the $600, as well as money for local governments and municipalities.
It's essential for everything to kind of continue on. Kind of in that same realm, I know that I was talking with Board President Debbie Dunlap, and with the new Speaker of the House. Their curiosity is, what are the possibilities of maybe having some additional hearings or other conversations about the Cup-Patterson school funding plan? I know that it was there. I believe there was at least one hearing on it earlier this year, and I know that there were concerns from the previous speaker, who has other issues he's dealing with now. See, I can say that. The concerns are, that maybe rural schools weren't getting the funding that they needed to equalize out, and some of the suburban or urban schools were getting a different, proportion of it. And I know there were concerns. I think from everyone that I've talked to, the fundamental aspects of the plan were spot on about what the funding needs to be as far as how much, per student, what the ideas would be for special education. The framework was there. It was just a question of how to pay for it. But I know that because of COVID and everything else that's kind of gone on, that's stalled. So I'm hoping if you could enlighten us to any possible things that might be coming down, or how you're going to advocate for that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. I know since Speaker Cup just got elected last week, there has been a lot of inquiries into where does the Cup-Patterson legislation go. We did have a number of hearings on it in the Finance Committee, because there was so many working groups. We wanted to hear about, the foundation funding, as well as funding for the low-income students or students who were dealing with poverty, as well as those who had disabilities. We also had some questions around transportation and that funding. And as you said, the framework was there, but there was a lot of concern for rural districts that felt like they weren't getting enough money. And, urban and rural always feel like they're left out and they're not getting what they need. And then there was another concern with some suburbs who were getting like a 200% increase. But if you look at where they had been versus, and it kind of flattened out over time, and then the increase, it seemed like a lot when you look at 200% increase, but it really wasn't when it comes down to dollars. And so with the Cup-Patterson plan, what I'm hoping, and I hope to sit down and have a conversation with Speaker Cup in the upcoming months, is, there were some studies in that bill and the legislation that still need to take place, so we can really get an idea of what does economic disadvantage look like for a rural community, for an urban community, even for a suburban community, because I think there's this misconception that people live in the suburbs and they're well-to-do and they don't have financial struggles. And I can tell you, just even with COVID-19, down the street on Main Street, they have a food bank, and the line goes all the way down past, where the 270 loop is. People are struggling. And so there are those studies that probably need to, happen. And so I don't know that the legislation will pass as it currently was introduced, but maybe during lame duck and in the middle of the night when things tend to pass, the studies that we need to have that will give us the data, we'll get into a bill and we can get moving on that, because we are 26 years into an unconstitutional funding formula. We still have an over-reliance on property taxes. And as we see with this pandemic, first thing that's cut is education, which is unfortunate. And so we need to have a funding formula that works for everyone, or maybe multiple funding formulas depending on, you know, where people live and go to school. And I know that has come up multiple times. So I'm hoping that with the speaker being the sponsor of the bill, he probably is inclined to, you know, want to see this pass or some form of it. It will be difficult for him to work on this legislation now being the speaker. If it doesn't pass this General Assembly, next General Assembly, who will carry that legislation. Also, Representative Patterson will no longer be here. He's term limited. And I sat on the Finance Subcommittee for Education with Patterson and Cup. And so I hope to be back on that committee again, looking at school funding. And maybe we can do something next General Assembly, if not this one.
I know somebody will always be there to carry the flag for the next assembly.
Yes.
One thing that we've done here in Reynoldsburg, and I don't know if you saw the Columbus Dispatch article, I believe it was yesterday, that Reynoldsburg and our police department are actually in the creation of a civilian review commission. Not that we didn't want to wait for the State House to go through some things, but we thought that if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And so we worked with the FOP, we worked with RPD to kind of create a framework of things, and it looks like we have the general idea of it. We had our first read, or our first working session in council 2 weeks ago, and so we're going to continue to work through it this month, and then when council returns after that. I know the House also had submitted something for racism as a healthcare issue.
Right.
Our council, led by Councilwoman Shanette Strickland, Councilwoman Meredith Lawson Rowe, Councilwoman Kristen Bryant, and President Angie Jenkins, amongst everyone on council, also went ahead and passed that for us. So we know that there's an issue, we know there are issues, and we believe in working proactively on all sides, because not every police officer is what sometimes they're perceived to be, and not every community member that wears Black Lives Matter or goes out and protest is what other people perceive them to be. And for what I've done in this place, in this office, is to try and bring these groups together to have the conversations. It's the teacher in me, I know, but the more you have those conversations, the better. And I'm hoping that, I know when we had Representative Rich Brown here about a month ago, he had talked about a number of issues that had come up, some potential things. And I know it was kind of, the framework was, I'm going to throw spaghetti at the wall, and it was just a whole bunch of everything, and let's see what sticks and kind of go through the process. So I hope that's something that the committees can take another look at this fall when they come back.
Absolutely. I am a sponsor of the Racism as a Public Health Crisis resolution, myself as well as Representative Stephanie House. And in the House of Representatives, we have HCR 31. And in the Senate, there is a SCR, Senate Concurrent Resolution 14, that was joint sponsored by Senator Williams and Senator Craig. When you look at that resolution, and I am so grateful to Reynoldsburg City Council, to you for supporting that legislation at the local level, it makes a difference. And it's not the end all be all, it is the first step. And if you look at our resolution that's in the House of Representatives, we lay out how redlining has had a disproportionate impact on Black people and people of color, education, and having an unconstitutional funding formula, as well as the disproportionate health impacts and disparities with COVID-19, as well as law enforcement violence being a public health crisis. And the American Public Health Association in 2018 already declared law enforcement violence as a public health issue. It is detrimental to communities of color when it comes, obviously, death, stress, anxiety, and all of these other things that really impact health and our health outcomes. I hope that when we come back into session in the House, that we bring this resolution to the floor for a vote. It does not need to have committee hearings like a bill. The Senate has held 2 hearings, over 17 hours of testimony, over 350 people submitted written testimony, as well as came in and provided oral testimony. And when I spoke with Senator Craig and Senator Williams, they said since those hearings, they have gotten an additional 150 letters and emails saying, please support this and pass it. I know that Chairman Berg wants to take that resolution on the road in Ohio and hear from the community. And we just feel like it's unacceptable. You have had 500 people from across the state say that, what their experiences are. These are people from the community from across Ohio. And I think that this is just another way to kick the can down the road and really not do anything substantial. And again, it's just one step. We're asking for a working group to be created. We're looking at laws that continue to perpetuate discrimination. We are asking to have every law in the Ohio Revised Code looked at with a health equity lens and a race equity lens, as well as grants and small business loans. We know that small businesses is the machine to our or the engine to our society, but there are communities that have been shut out from the grant making process or the grant approval process and small business loans. And so we want those things to be looked at as well, and then look at legislation that will really promote health and equity. And we can do that. There just has to be a political will. So we'll see.
One of the things that we're going to try and do in the city, starting with next year's budget, is to have an opportunity to have a CIC, community investment, and what we can do is for small business grants. A couple of businesses that hopefully, knock on wood, you'll find out soon, that are going to be coming into the community, they were asking, are there any grants, are there any opportunities, and we just didn't have the funding set aside for it. I know we have the mechanisms in place legislatively, but now it's a question of actually funding it. And one of those things is it's a combination of giving back to the community, it's a combination of encouraging people to start businesses within our community, and we're hoping to do that in conjunction with grants from outside as well. So it's a political will, and it's about putting yourselves out there to show what your values are and what's really important.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention, to your point about having the Citizens Review Board and speaking with the FOP and really just having a conversation, I think it's necessary. I know some of my colleagues, as well as myself with the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, have had a meeting with the state FOP to talk about how can we find some common ground. We know that there are issues in the police force, as well as there are communities who feel like they are being over-policed and are dying at the hands of police and police violence. And they were supportive of de-escalation legislation. They were willing to acknowledge that they had put forward the FOP had put forward some recommendations a few years ago, and that the governor at the time and the legislature had no interest on moving on those. And that's unfortunate. And we probably won't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but to your point, I think the people who elected us require us and expect us to have those uncomfortable conversations and see where we can find common ground, if at all, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's how you make progress. That's
Absolutely.
How you move the ball forward. I know one of the things that we did when we brought in, because we hired a new police chief recently, we had somebody from the FOP on the committee as well, and this was at a time when there are many members of the community that were not too fond of the FOP, but the reality is you're not going to make substantial change in the best interest of everyone if you don't have somebody sitting at the table.
Right.
So I was very appreciative to the FOP, and I'm sure there's some people out there watching that they were part of the process, in addition to bringing about some of these good changes that we're going to have here in Reynoldsburg.
Right.
All right. It's not the worst part of the interview process, but it can be a little shaky. Do we have any questions?
I do. Representative, maybe you can answer. Angela Abram wants to know, can you expand on how the formula for district spending is allocated with regards to the CARES funding? Different districts will be allotted different amounts.
All right, that's better than one, because I thought she was going to go into the whole how is school funding set with the mystical, magical formula.
Right. So that is a great question, and there is the per pupil funding formula, and so for Reynoldsburg, I think it's $56 per pupil. They also factored in transportation. There's some getting into the weeds, and I am happy to share the formula and how things were broken down. There's many categories of how the CARES Act funding is allocated over a number of categories, and then they have what it's broken down by how many students are registered. And so I'm sorry I don't have a better answer because it can get into the weeds, but if she's a school board member?
Yeah, I was going to say,
she's
on the school board. So.
I could send that to you so you can look at the different categories, and then you can have some information. And then if you have any questions after that, I'd be happy to answer them after you can look at the graph.
That's all we have for right now.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming. You're more than welcome. I know you have a busy schedule, but you're more than welcome to say kind of for the rest of everything and chime in as we go through. Great conversations. Obviously, I'm always going to push a little bit on the education. It just happens to be you're on the education committee, so you're just going to have to deal with me asking. So moving forward, I didn't know if you're aware of this. We are actually going to be having a town hall tonight. It's a virtual town hall on Civic Park. So I hope for all of you that are out there that if you want to take a look at what we're going to potentially try and do to improve our Civic Park facilities. Civic Park, in the opinion of a lot of people here, is the most underutilized park that we have here. It's in dire need of some change, and so over the last couple of months we've been working with one of our design firms to kind of come up with some possibilities of what it's going to look like. So tonight at 6 o'clock we're going to have it on a Zoom call, but also broadcast on Facebook for everyone to participate in and take a look and see what some of the suggestions that are out there. It's not going to be a final plan, but it's going to be something that gives you, everybody out there, an idea of what's possible for the park. And then from there, we'll take some community feedback, do a little bit of refining, and hopefully bring it back to council with a couple of years worth of some plans to improve Civic Park. I know that potentially Councilwoman Kristen Bryan is out there, and I know that right now all she's saying is dog park, dog park, dog park. The dog park is part of the plans, so that's something that's out there that we'll go through. So that's tonight, and then hopefully the next two Thursdays at the Farmers Market on the 13th and the 20th. I'll be back out at the Farmers Market with the actual display board of what the potential park can look like, so people can come in and provide a little bit of feedback. A lot of it is just trying to get out to the community. We did the same thing with our Wagner Road project a couple of weeks ago, which is also already, we're moving forward with that one. But the Civic Park will give people an opportunity to actually take more than just a few minutes on screen to actually look and see all the cool things that we have in store. So that's tonight at 6 o'clock. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. We also have a community commission update. Big believer in trying to get more and more people involved in everything. Our community commission was established officially by council at the last meeting. And there's going to be a couple of different things that we're going to do. There's groups that would be responsible for the new Americans and how to integrate into society, but also what can we learn from our new Americans about their way of life. We can look at neighborhood beautification, transportation, because I'm sure that you didn't know this, but occasionally people speed. I know, I was shocked when I heard that, but apparently it happens. Along with some other ones, some military recognition as well. We are waiting patiently for all of you that are curious about the parking lot on Main and Lancaster. It's going to be our Memorial Plaza. It's going to be dedicated to our active and veteran of the armed forces. So we can actually have a location for something to recognize achievements. So we can do things. We're hoping to have everything done long before September 11th, but that's kind of our goal, where we can have a ceremony there, social distancing, of course, but then Veterans Day, 4th of July, Memorial Day, something along those lines all the way across. So we have that group as well for military recognition, but it's just a way for people to do it. We had probably, I think, over 40 people overall express interest, and that's something to be said about, and they want to do this, they want to do that, and it wasn't just the police commission, it was all the other ones as well. So I think anytime we can get more community members involved, the better. And obviously, our council is very supportive of it. So we have that. I love the idea. Oh, I think
I'm a veteran, so you know.
That's why I might have mentioned it. Yeah.
Right.
So, but that'll be on August 13th at 7 p.m. You'll start seeing some displays on that probably starting tomorrow after we get through with our town hall for Civic Park tonight. Some development news. We are going to be having a planning commission on Thursday, and it's going to be kind of reintroducing the world to Chick-fil-A is going to be coming to Reynoldsburg. I believe it's at the Logan Steakhouse location on 256. They're going to come in and basically show a design about how the drive-thru is going to look. So it's going to happen. They just have to go through to make sure that everything flows the right way, to make sure that our landscaping is right and things like that. So that'll give us an opportunity for a Chick-fil-A here in Reynoldsburg. And there's also some improvements to one of the most famous pizza places in Reynoldsburg. Vic's is going to have some improvements, and they're going to do some things that they're going to talk about tomorrow night. And there is a potential for all of you out there that there may be another planning commission meeting in about 2 weeks that may have some more fun business opportunities out there to be announced. We're still waiting to get everything in, but we should have another meeting to bring in some other things out there that I think the community will like. So we've got that going on. Now comes the tough question. Have you filled out your census forms yet?
I have. I'm so glad. Yes,
okay.
I have. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end. We actually have some training sessions coming up this weekend at our senior center for some of the door-to-door that needs to go on. And obviously, there's been a reduction in the time frame for whatever reason. But we want to make sure that we try and get as many people into the census. Just to let you know, Reynoldsburg 10 years ago got 71.9%. We're at 72.9%.
Okay.
So we're well and above that. Actually, it was 70. I don't think it got to 71. I think it just was just under 70. So
okay.
yeah, so we're doing really well.
Good.
That town over across 256 that we really don't care about, still behind us, so we don't want to mention them. We are gaining ground on Gahanna. Gahanna's around 78.7. And as always, Columbus continues to try, 58.7. So a lot of work will have to be done out there. But this is what I was told, and I did not know this. We're losing to that team up north in our census count, and that's just unacceptable. We're at 67.3% all the way across Ohio, and that state up north is at 68.8%. So, it's one thing to challenge, the local stuff, but I mean, come on, folks, we can't let this happen. We can't let them do that. So make sure you get out there, hashtag Census 2020. Make sure you get that census filled out. It's incredibly important. You mentioned earlier not only like the funding per pupil, it's kind of the same style for the census when it comes to federal funding and state allocations. It's based on your population. So the more accurate idea we have, the better funding we get and the more representation all the way across, which is a huge thing. So again, make sure everybody's out there. Go ahead and share and hashtag tweet it and everything else all the way across. That pretty much brings a wrap to it. We do have our next fireside chat next Wednesday, and we'll bring in Truro Township Fire Chief Jeff Sharps. I know he's looking forward to coming in here. If I can tear him away from the new firehouse down the road. I'm not sure he's left since it's been opened. He's really enjoying that. But we'll have that here. And again, Representative Crawley, I'm so thrilled that you were able to join us today. It was great to have you, and we'll bring you back again in the not too distant future, and we'll probably still talk about education.
Absolutely. I love to talk about it. Thank you for having me. I know you mentioned the census, but I want to remind everybody to request their absentee ballot application so you can vote and not be shut out due to a pandemic or confusion or anything like that. So please, if you haven't already, please request your application.
Yeah, it'll still be a stressful election this year, but not nearly as much as last year.
Right.
That's just for some of us.
Right. But thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So again, everybody out there, stay safe, be respectful on social media if you can, and as always, put your shopping carts back. Seriously, it drives me nuts. Other than that, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.